Hi, and welcome to another episode of Budget Prepping. I'm your host, Dr. Matt. Now, this episode, we're going to do something a little bit different. It's one of those things where disaster prepping is really a learning process. And it just occurred to me as I'm sitting on an Adirondack chair on my deck, flies are swirling all around. I'm thinking, where are the flies coming from? How do they know something is dead near me? They're looking for food. They're looking for a place to make babies, all that sort of thing. And I'm thinking, the flies are, these things just know where the rot is. Well, that got me thinking. I'm sorry, because I have been publishing a weekly newsletter to a handful of people about disaster preparedness, but in the realm of stacking. So I refer to these as my stacker preppers, and you've heard me use that term for myself. So I've got some notes here that I'm going to share with you. I'm going to go and do a weekly video for this week's stacker prepper update. So here we go. Number one, I've been doing this since May. Here we are, and it's August. It's like, again, I am so sorry. I should have been doing this the whole time. So here we go. This week's update. Here we go. The big news, of course, is that right now is the BRICS meeting going on. It started the wee hours of this morning in Pacific time here, and the outcomes and impact of this particular meeting are certainly going to have some global impact. We're probably not going to know what the full impact is even for a long time, but we will clearly know right away some major things. And with that, gold and silver are going to probably go up sharply because of what's going on. They have gone up the last couple of days pretty sharp. Gold and silver have been down. They usually take that downturn during the summer months. Very common pretty much every year, but we're sneaking up to the end of it. But now we've got this big BRICS powwow going on here. But one thing I learned this week is that the U.S. banks are also going to have a big powwow Wednesday and Thursday in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And of course, this is including the Fed chairman, Mr. Powell. And they've already set a press conference for Friday. And my insiders are telling me that the government, of course, is doing their normal routine, their normal modus operandi, and that is to share bad news after the markets close on Friday. So we're expecting, my insiders are, for this to be some semblance of some bad news, but probably including potentially some outcomes of the BRICS meetings themselves. So of course, Friday market close is 12:30 Pacific time. So by the time I have dinner Friday, I'm going to know a little bit of what's going on. So at this press conference, I'm going to be probably seeing if I can catch it live. It'd be really interesting to see that. But anyway, this has put global investment markets on edge. And this has been sneaking up for some time. Many investors, including governments, have taken out loans to purchase investments. This has actually been going on for a long time. This is called buying on margin. You've probably heard that term. So if margin sellers, people that loan money for you to go buy stuff, are getting a little nervous, they have the right to call the loan, which is forcing you to sell what you have, and they require a big fat chunk of your change. So you would sell a whole bunch of both their money and your money to pay them all of the money that you owe them. And this calling of the loan forces that payback. This happens when prices fall, forcing those that are leveraged in debt to sell. Pretty common stuff going on. However, this is starting to snowball at a rate that is potentially pretty dangerous. If it snowballs enough, there, of course, would be a heavy crash in the market across the globe. And this is all the global markets here. So many believe that cryptocurrencies are the answer. Well, I don't participate in cryptos. You are welcome to. I don't, because I kind of go with some rules going on. I mentioned one of those rules is that gold and silver commonly take the summer off, as they say, take the summer off. And with that, that's pretty much every year. Well, we don't have cryptos around long enough to have some semblance of an established, followable type recognized behavior. So we really don't know what crypto is going to do during a very, very serious economic downturn, if in fact that's where we are headed. So if they were around, have been around for decades, well, yeah, we would have that history. Certainly 2008, 2009 would have been great to have a lot of the cryptos out there. There's certainly a whole bunch. But most of them are not backed by anything. They're just a pool of money that people have put money into, and then they kind of share that and they trade on emotion. And of course, the stock market itself is trading on emotion. That's what it does. Somebody asked Warren Buffett, when it says, well, your investments this week have just lost, $100 billion, and he goes, no, they haven't. I still have them. Well, they've gone down in value. Well, I still own them. I still own the same percentages of those companies. I haven't lost anything. So that's when you cannot, you don't realize the losses until you go to buy or sell. So anyway, with that in mind, cryptos act this in a very peculiar way. When you think they're going to go up, they go down. When they think they're going to go up, they go up. When you think, it's just, you don't know. But I did come across a handful of cryptocurrencies that are in fact gold backed. Tether Gold, Digix Global, Paxos Gold, Goldcoin, Perthmint Gold, and Meth Gold are to some level gold backed. Some are better than others. I would recommend you do any homework on cryptos before you do any investing at all. And I would always, if I were to go into crypto, I would always make sure that I am finding something that is asset backed. So that's very, very clear. There is one very, very peculiar thing out in the marketplace. An individual from the Kenyan government, who, by the way, is at the BRICS meeting, had a little announcement to the citizens of Kenya. And he said, do the math and get out of US dollars because something will happen in the next 2 weeks. Well, the only thing happening globally in the next 2 weeks from the time that this was done is, in fact, the BRICS meeting. And Kenyan currency has been super bad, super bad. So Kenya actually, people like buying and selling or doing all of their purchasing with US dollars. Well, if a government official is saying, get out of US dollars because something bad's going to happen, maybe something bad's going to happen. I don't know, but it sounds pretty creepy. Well, to handle this uncertainty, one YouTuber offered great advice, matching Dave Ramsey's plan of having 3 to 6 months expenses or for cash to handle all of your expenses. But this guy took a very unique perspective, and I really kind of appreciate what he did. He looked at the cost of living per state, and that included possessing physical gold and physical silver. And the cost of living, he came across a national average, and then by state gave a multiplier. I live in Washington State, and the multiplier for Washington State was you multiply the national average times 1.151. And therefore, that would be a good round number that I would need to have saved up. Now, my budget is different from a lot of people. I haven't lived in the world of debt for over 10 years. So my monthly expenses are fairly low. But the average monthly debt in this particular case, he's divided up for single people and families of 4, so you can kind of spread it out from that point there. But he suggested that to cover 6 months of expenses, you would need to have some cash and 11 troy ounces of gold, and just think a troy ounce is worth about almost $2,000, and 216 troy ounces of silver. Now that seemed kind of high to me, but that also assumes that you can sell your bullion in the event of something difficult or challenging going on. And that's where my disaster brain's kicking in. So what I'm about to tell you, please don't forget there's 4 levels of disaster: minor, moderate, major, and catastrophic. So of these 4 levels, I would possess silver only to barter at this level. Because historically, and I'm talking like millennia, centuries and millennia, once you get to this level, precious metals don't do anything. You have food, and now with the modern hat on, food, ammo, alcohol, coffee, stuff like that. That's tradable, consumable goods. So in the worst of the worst of the worst, it's not going to be that way. Even the Bible says in the end times, a piece of bread can buy a bag of gold. So eventually, food becomes the new money. So consider that. Um, so, but right now in this minor and moderate level, that's where there's some opportunities in precious metals. And that's why I have some precious metals at my house. I've also invested some that are vaulted and stored elsewhere because I just don't have a big whopping floor safe that's too heavy to carry. I just don't. Um, but it's also quite challenging for a lot of people because if you live in an apartment, you can't get a big, a 1,000-pound floor safe. You have to keep track of where it is in your dwelling. If there's a fire, you don't want one that gives you 15 minutes protection or 30 minutes or 45 minutes. You want something that's going to give you an hour, maybe two. And of course, there's an expense with all of those. And if you're a sweet little grandma, you're probably not going to squeeze 1,000-pound safe into the hatchback of your Subaru and bring it all the way home and put it in yourself. You've got to actually pay a lot of people. And in some cases, the delivery and setup is more expensive than the safe. Now, there's some wonderful YouTube options out there. Probably my favorite on picking the right safe is from our friends at Yankees Stacking, and just a great video. But again, there's lots of options out there. I wouldn't necessarily buy a used one for the sake of just getting a cheap one. You want to have the one with the right combination type system. But you just have to remember that in the event of a fire, anything electronic's going to go away. I'm an old school guy. I like the dial. But a little tiny safe, probably not so good for something as simple as even like one of those fishing magnets, go magnet fishing. A big heavy magnet can trigger the mechanism inside, and you don't have to even turn a dial. You just put a magnet on it, wiggle it around a little bit, and all of a sudden you hear a click, and then it opens. So yeah, it's not good. Anyway, lastly, for today, I want to just tell you that another bank failed. I don't know if you saw this news. It was a little bank, a little tiny one in rural Washington State, a couple hundred miles from where I live. But the Fed went in and pulled the plug on them, cease and desist of, close the doors, because their assets went from 91 million, if I got the math right, 91 million to 19 million in a year. So what was happening is that people were gradually and methodically pulling their money out. And it wasn't a big run on the bank, so nobody really knew what was going on. It's just that their assets got lower and lower and lower and lower, and they couldn't borrow their way out of debt, which is like the worst thing ever. So they did the unthinkable, and they tried to invest in crypto, and they got burnt in one of the non-asset-backed cryptos scams, and now they've lost their, literally $70 million. Like, oh, how do you do that? So, again, I'm not a fan of crypto. I know a lot of people are. A lot of people have made a lot of money, but we'll just leave that. I just don't have the money myself to speculate in that world. If I did, I probably would. But I just don't feel good about them unless they're asset backed. Now, what does that mean? Well, I also want to physically possess what I have. Or if I don't physically possess it, have it at a vaulted situation where it is licensed and insured, so that in the event of even just something, disaster at a micro level, or a theft of a building or something like that, then the insurance money would cover my assets there. But again, that's where mine is. I've got a little bit of silver for bartering, not much, but then I've also got most of my money in vaulted gold and silver. And right now, with and this is not financial advice, this is just me telling you what I'm doing. With the gold to silver ratio being heavy on the gold side right now, I'm a little bit heavier on the silver side. I'm actually probably about 80-20. And as it gets lower and lower and lower toward 65-ish, then I will probably move that around to get closer to being 50-50. Now, if it goes below that, of course, then I'll be heavy on the gold. But right now, with all with Fed now in place and BRICS doing their things, the reserve currency of the U.S., which, by the way, if you haven't heard, the US is no longer #1 in reserve currency already. So keep in mind that bad things are going to happen to the US dollar. That is an absolute given. And with that, our action, the best action we can take is to prepare ourselves for these tough economic times. Now, an economic disaster, a lot of people don't consider that to be a true disaster, but man, they can be pretty tough. I mean, we had the Great Depression that literally lasted 15 years and even then some. World War II is a great way for us to boost our economy to get out of debt, but it was quite challenging, and a lot of people were completely destitute. And how do you handle that sort of thing? Well, it's pretty tough. So preparing now is your path to do that. But again, budget prepping is here for you to be able to help you maximize how fast you can get yourself ready. Now, here's the deal I want to make for you here. There's a handful of ways to get a hold of me. If you want to be on this weekly email, what you need to do is the easiest way to get a hold of me is to go to notyournormalchurch.com, which is going to take you to Facebook, and then leave a message there for the budget prepper to add me to the email. So please have the budget prepper add me to the email. I'm the pastor at that church, and with that, I oversee all of those messages coming in. So I will get that message. That's the easiest way to do that. And then that's where you could also safely and securely include your email address that you want that to go to. So that's the sneaky way to be able to pull that off. So anyway, again, notyournormalchurch.com. In Facebook, it's going to direct you right to Facebook, and then leave a message and ask and just say, please have the budget prepper include me on the weekly Stacker Prepper email. So with that, I'll say goodbye this time. Sorry it took so long, but these are probably going to be a little bit longer than usual. Please, please, please be a huge help by liking the page, sharing the post, print it out, staple it to your friend's forehead, whatever you need to do to spread the word. I'm just a total nerd, total geek, love this stuff, and I care about people. So with that, we'll see you next time.